as I was saying, the bigger the impulse, the bigger the jump height will get, the longer you'll be out of the ground. The more force and velocity you get could mean that you break through gravity for longer and like you're in the air. Yeah. So group data. Although some people have got with more mass can produce a higher jump height. For example, number 2, they've got quite a big mass and quite a big jump height. However, your mass can't be relied on for your jump height because it doesn't actually take into account what is muscle and what is fat. So someone could have quite a big mass and get be fully muscle and produce quite a big jump height. However, for a bodybuilder, if they're full on muscle but they're really heavy, could also create a problem because they're too heavy and their muscles find it harder to push off. Whereas if someone is quite lean but yet still muscly, it will be easier for them because it's not quite as much mass to push off into the air. The bigger the force, the bigger the jump, basically. But mass, if someone is lean and muscly, then they'll push off better. However, they can also be quite skinny and not weigh quite as much, and therefore not get quite much jump height because they're not fully based on muscle. Therefore, they don't have quite as much to power themselves up into the air. Then, as you can see, number 10, they've got quite a big mass, well, an average mass, but however, don't have quite good jump height. This could mean that they've got more fat than muscle in their body and can't quite produce quite as much height as everyone else. 17 again has quite a high mass, but then again quite a high height, which can also be because they've got more muscle than fat. However, it could cause a problem. Jump height and height. So, as you can see, as the jump height increases, so does the height of the participant. However, in some cases, it doesn't. It's quite various. With the R values and the P values, there is a moderate positive correlation because it is above 0.5, which, as you can see, it slightly goes up. It's only a moderate positive correlation because it's not quite as high. If it was +1, then it'd be a positive correlation. If it was 0, then there would be no correlation at all. If it was around 0.5, negative 0.5, be a moderate negative correlation, and if it was -1, it would be a negative correlation. So as you can see, it's a moderate positive correlation because the R value is 0.48 and 0.039 for the P value. Summary. Strengths and weaknesses. So my client, when comparing data, there were big jumps compared to impulse. With this one, you can see my client Emily had quite a big impulse for the CMJ, but her height was a lot bigger than the difference between. So this difference here is a lot less than this difference here. So therefore, her 45 degree was a lot better than her 90, along with other people's. However, her gap with her CMJ is a lot bigger and a lot more different. So yeah, that's what I mean by that. The jumping was consistent, so she was the jump between all of them was quite consistent, whereas the 45 degree was higher than the 90 degree. However, the CMJ was overall the better jump, and you could create an average out of the results we got. Was a significant CMJ, so there was a significant CMJ relative to the group data above average. the more experienced player had the highest jump. However, my client had the average CMJ and was quite high and did quite a good jump out of that. However, some weaknesses, she was low power on average compared to group data, because she was quite, she didn't quite produce quite as much power as others. This applies to the force as well, where she wasn't quite producing quite as much force as the others. This could be due to the fact that she hasn't got quite as much muscle, or isn't doing the right technique or something like that. However, she had an unstable jump for the CMJ, even though it was big. This goes back to my when comparing data, there were big jumps compared to impulse, that sort of thing. This could be due to her stability and balance. So if she wasn't standing quite right, then she could be standing quite straight. Therefore, she hasn't got quite as much balance. Whereas if her base of support was quite bigger, and she was almost in the position of boxing out, her feet are shoulder width apart, bent, knees bent, and she has more stability to land and things like that. Push off. Strategy 1 is the layup. My target is to get a 50% success rate in her next game. However, she has to attempt a minimum of 8 shots, layups. Her layup should be gradual, so when she's learning to do it, she should start off by standing underneath the hoop and just kind of jumping and put it in. Then just take 2 steps back and do the same again, and just to keep adding steps to make sure she is able to gradually increase that layup and be able to do it in a game situation. She might even be able to put a defensive opposition in there to try and do that, like maybe put a passive person in there first, then go into a defensive one. Then my client is to do 50% success rate in minimum of 8 things in her next game, which could be in roughly 3-4 weeks time. Strategy 2. Here for my client, I've set for them to work on their box out. So my client will be working on her technique, for example, like making sure her feet are wide enough apart, so her base of support and stuff like that. Making sure, so here she's going to do a passive, she's going to get 75% success rate in her next game, and to do a minimum of 9 box outs. And this can be either defensive or rebound, or offensive rebound. And so she has to make at least 9 box out rebounds. This can be either defensive or offensive, and should get a 75% success rate. Her technique should be better, so her box out should be her wide base of support. And this is to be done in 3 weeks in her next game. And my client is to do little steps of the box out. For my box out and rebound, they should gradually work into it. So they should start off with the preparation phase and do that a couple of times, where they are doing it by themselves and then adding a passive defender, and then gradually a opposition, and making it more into a real life game. They had to start off with the preparation phase, where they've got to make sure that they are boxed out and in contact with the player, keeping an eye on the ball. Then to go on to the execution phase, where they should jump up and put their arms in front of them, ready to catch the ball. These are to be done together, so they should follow on from each other instead of doing them step by step. You're gradually increasing what they're doing. This is also to be done gradually with a passive defender, then an attacking defender. Then for the recovery phase, this should also be done where they are boxed out, where they have the ball up towards their chin with both hands on the ball and with elbows out to ensure that it makes it harder for the opposition to get the ball. They then to land and pivot away from the opposition and then pass out to the available player. Strategy 3, power improvement. So for my client, they didn't have quite as good power or force, so I'm going to work on their power and force to increase that. I'm going to ask them to do some plyometric training, which is where like you do isometric. So for example, a wall sit or a squat where both muscles are being contracting. However, to improve their power they asked to improve their power by 25% in 3.5 weeks. They are to do this by doing some other training such as squat jumps, wall sits, wall squats, deadlifts, interval sprints, and leg press. They can test this for force plates. So we can test this every end of the week, and to do it for 3.5 weeks. So every end of the week we can test it by making them jump on a force plate, ask them to show whether or not they have increased their force. They're going to increase from 25% to increase 25%. They're meant to do roughly 15. They're meant to do 15 reps of each, 3 times, and a set of 3. To be done 3 to 4 times a week in the gym. They're meant to do 10 different activities such as like squat jumps, interval sprints, leg press, stuff like that. And for them to every 2 sessions, they are to increase the weight by 5 kilograms.